Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Bit of a treat for us today, another Rolex video on the channel. Now when you see a Rolex on Just One More Watch, you can be fairly confident that it doesn't belong to me. You can also be fairly confident that it belongs to my mysterious Rolex owning friend, Mr. X. You can follow Mr. X on Instagram at @TheRealMrX if you want to see what he gets up to and if you want to see his outrageous collection of Swiss watches. This one, probably one of the most outrageous of all. Certainly it takes the prize as the most expensive watch that I have reviewed on the channel to date, coming in at over 17,000 Australian dollars. Now, I've gone on record saying that I'll never buy a Rolex Submariner, but if I did happen to have 17 grand lying around under my bed somewhere, I might be tempted to one of these two-tones. It's a stunner. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. So a stunning two-tone sub to show you all today, and as you can see there, the Rolex gloves are out. It's a rare occasion that these ones come out of the cupboard, but if you've ever owned a watch with gold mid-links or had an encounter with one, you'll know that they start to scratch if you so much as look at them the wrong way. So I'm going to be particularly careful with Mr. X's brand new Submariner today. While I put the gloves on, let's talk about my favourite subject, money. Here we are at the Rolex Australia website looking at the specific model in question, that being the 116613LN black and gold two-tone Submariner. Yours for a mere 17,800 odd Australian dollars. Now that is a fair chunk of change, especially when you compare it to the regular date Submariner, yours for a little under 11,500 Australian dollars. However, the Aussie market being the way it is at the moment, if you manage to get a date sub out of a dealer, you can add 2 grand onto that and flip it on the used market within minutes. So 13.5 then for a steel one, that means there's only about 4 grand difference between a steel and a two-tone. Due to the fact that steel Submariners are like hen's teeth to get a hold of at the moment, people are making a decision to go for one of these two-tone subs as a relatively viable alternative because they are a little bit easier to get a hold of. Doesn't mean to say you can just walk into a dealer and buy one though. There's usually a bit of a wait, and look at that beauty. Still got the bezel protector on it and everything. And look at this thing up close, isn't it just gorgeous? Certainly, perhaps a little more than a whiff of the 1980s about these two-tones, maybe that's why I like it. The Submariner launched in the 1950s, but the blue two-tone, the bluesy, was first launched in the 1980s, and I believe they did this black and gold one for the first time in the 1990s. But fashion is cyclical. I think they're coming back in again, these two-tones, certainly helped by the scarcity of the regular ones. So dimensions and specifications almost identical to the regular Submariner, just a couple of small differences. 40mm in diameter, 12.5mm thick, about 48mm lug tip to lug tip, 20mm lug width. It weighs a little more than a regular sub though at 168 grams. The 18 karat gold capping on those mid links, the crown, the bezel, etc. adding a little bit of extra weight. Most everything else though is the same dead flat sapphire crystal with Cyclops there covering the date window at the 3 o'clock. The rest of the watch is made of the usual 904L oyster steel, so not the usual 316L that is found on most watches. This is Rolex's own proprietary steel. It's not as hard as 316L, so it will scratch and nick a little easier, but it is softer, so it's more compliant, it's easier to polish out cuts and scratches with age. Now this one's got a Cerachrome bezel. They introduced this a few years ago. Again, harder than standard ceramic and is less likely to fade if you do leave this one in the sun for a reasonable amount of exposure. Typical sterile Rolex case back there. Still got the stickers on this one. I won't be peeling them off. I'll leave that to Mr. X today. This one contains the 3135 caliber that can trace its lineage back to the 1980s. 31 joule, 48 hour power reserve roughly. New Parachrome hairspring, kind of anti-magnetic properties that they added a few years ago, and a quick set date function, but you don't get a lot of bells and whistles for your 17,800 odd Aussie dollars really, do you? You do get a timeless and simple dial though. Just gorgeous. So applied indices. Now, one difference between this one and the normal one is that the indexes, rather than being ringed in white gold, are ringed in 18 karat yellow gold to match the rest of the watch, as are the hands. 4-line there, Submariner, 1,000 feet, 300 meters of water resistance, superlative chronometer and officially certified. So that means that this one you can expect an accuracy level of plus or minus 2 seconds per day in the case. Now, I haven't measured this one, but the last Submariner I had a look at came in almost exactly bang on accurate. So I guess that's where some of your 17Gs goes. Case finishing is, as you would expect, superb from the Rolex. High polished on the side, super fine brushing on the lugs, and that gold bezel, I must admit, just looks beautiful. Contrasting nicely, kind of brush finish on the bezel, contrasting nicely with the high polished gold crown. Again, crown guards semi-shrouded there. You can still get a decent grip on it when you do want to adjust it, but just exquisite level of finishing on the Submariner, which is what you'd hope for if you were dropping this much cash on one. And the bracelet is a thing of beauty. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think the Rolex Submariner bracelet is arguably the finest bracelet in the world today. Tapers from 20 down to about 15, back up to 18 at the clasp, so a chunk of taper, and it's got the glide lock clasp. Now, these were introduced a few years ago. I think just an absolute boon. Ratcheting system, again there's some stickers on here, I'll be very careful with this one today. Ratcheting system allowing you to micro adjust this fit to about 2 millimeters a time, ensuring that you always get the right fit. There's about 2 centimeters of flex in here in total, so no excuse for having an uncomfortable Submariner on your wrist. And there it is, sitting on top of my 7-inch wrist. Now, two-tone is not going to be to everyone's taste. If you are a shy and retiring type, well, you're probably not going to buy a Rolex in the first place. You're certainly not going to buy one that overtly tries to gain the attention of passers-by like this one does, and it certainly achieves that with those gorgeous mid-links and the bezel and the detailing on the dial. Pretty nice fit though. I've made my complaints about the maxi case known in previous videos. It's not as elegant in my eyes as the older 5-digit models are. I guess it doesn't look too noticeable in this one because there's plenty else going on with the gold. And there it is, zoomed out a little further for perspective, 40mm, such a classic size. Glad to see that they haven't messed around with that. There are other bigger Rolexes available if you want a 42, 43. There's the Deep Sea and Sea Dwellers, etc, etc. But they haven't messed around with the core identity of the Submariner as a 40mm dive watch. Looks good outside in natural light as well. Again, those gorgeous gold mid-links playing with the light nicely. I'm not so sure the blue one is as effective overall. Maybe that's just a stage too far for me, but I could probably pull off the black and gold one if I had to. If somebody twisted my arm, I reckon I could cope with wearing one of these on a daily basis. Especially with lume as good as this. If you're a regular on the channel, you know that lume is a big thing for me. Now again, so much of Rolex is made in-house, it's proprietary. The lume is no different. This is their Chromolite lume, they introduced it a couple of years ago. Similar blue tones to BGW9, but apparently it lasts twice as long. I'm in no position to argue with that. Stunning lume on this Submariner and all the other Rolexes that I've reviewed. And a final little zoom in on the dial there, you can see from the angle that lovely chapter ring, the Rehaut dial. They added that a few years ago, Rolex, 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 and the crown there at the 12 o'clock. Swiss made and the serial number down there at the 6 o'clock as well, so you know that Mr. X has spent his money on a genuine watch. So it's not going to suit everyone today, the two-tone Submariner. $17,000 odd price tag, we'll see to that. And it's going to take a special type of person to pull off wearing a watch that is as big and ballsy and in your face as this two-tone gold and black Rolex is. And don't expect it to look this good in 12 months time. I'm being desperately careful today. I'm really looking forward to putting this one back in the box and returning it to Mr. X with nary a scuff or a scratch on those hyper polished mid links. But I guess if you've got 17 grand to drop on one of these, you can afford to be a little bit robust with it and get a few nicks and cuts on it. It's not going to lose that much in value regardless, is it? Let's be honest. So I may well never buy a Rolex Submariner, but if I did, I could possibly see myself in one of these retro beauties. So there you have it, 17 grand's worth of two-tone black gold and stainless steel Rolex Submariner. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. That really is a stunning watch. Two-tone's not going to be to everyone's taste. Personally, I think the black one is a mile easier to wear than the blue one. Blue, gold and steel is just a bit too much for me. Just as well I don't have 17 grand lying around, but if I did, I might be tempted. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.